happy Monday. So excited to be here with you and also excited about tonight's topic. And so tonight's topic is called When to Say When. So I get asked this question a lot. Brindley, I have this going on or this going on, and I want to set a boundary and I don't know how to. And had something happen on our team last week where someone in our organization set a boundary. And every Friday, I send out an email to the entire company asking for their wins for the week. And this individual actually wrote back and said that her win was setting a boundary, and that the way that it was received, because previously it wouldn't have been received in the way that it had been. And so it really got me starting to think a lot about boundaries and when is the right time to say when. A lot of us, I know for myself, I'll stay in situations or I'll stay in certain relationships or I'll keep doing certain things even though I know it's not where I want to be. Even though my gut and everything in me is saying it's not right, I typically am staying because I'm afraid of hurting the other person. I'm afraid of losing something. I'm afraid of not getting something that I want. It's all rooted in some type of fear. And the truth is that setting boundaries and knowing when to say when and then actually following through with it is super uncomfortable. It's not easy. It's not easy for the person that is setting the boundary, and it's not easy for the person that is receiving the boundary setting. It's not easy for the person that has to tell you when, and it's certainly not easy for the person that is being told when is when, right? When enough is enough. And so what I wanted to do is break it down into some simple steps of a process that I've used to figure out when it is the right time to say when, and then how I go through the process of saying when. It's certainly not easy, yet just like everything else, it can be simple if we choose for it to be. And so part of the reason that it's so difficult to say when is that a lot of times we end up saying when too quickly. We do it out of reaction or emotion or situation, and then it's very reactive, it's not well thought out, and it all goes wrong, and we end up going right back into the same behavior because we feel bad because we completely destroyed the way that it went down, right? And so the first thing you want to do is set a deadline. Set a time that by this date, I'm going to have exited this relationship. I'm going to have ended this certain behavior. I'm going to basically say when, by this date. Once you have that deadline, you may need to share it with someone else. And we'll get to that in a moment. Right now, I just want you to set the deadline. Then you're going to prepare yourself for that day. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself to get prepared for when that time comes, when that deadline comes. Number one is, what needs to take place for you to be ready? So is there anything that you need to get in alignment? So I'll use in this conversation the example of an adult parent that is still financially supporting an older child. Okay, they've supported this child. This child has become financially stable and secure and reliant on this parent. And this parent continues to give even though they know they shouldn't. And so in this situation, what do they need to do to get ready to financially withdraw from their child? Well, they may need to prep the child. They may need to help the child do a budget. They may need to get their finances in order. They may need to realize how much money they have been giving and where they're going to give versus where they're not going to give. So really thinking through what needs to take place in order for you to say when on that day. Then I want you to ask yourself, if this decision was going to be made for you and you had absolutely no choice in the decision-making process, like someone said to you, Brindley, it's going to happen on this day, how would you prepare? So if you have a hard time figuring out what you need to do, I want you to go there. I want you to just act as if somebody is making it happen for you and you have absolutely no choice. If you absolutely had no choice, then what would you do to prepare for that day? Number three is I want you to ask, what will you feel or receive when it happens? So I basically want you to future pace into how you're going to feel once you say when on that day. What is your world going to look like? How are you going to feel? What's going to be different? What are you going to receive back? Maybe you're going to get time back. Maybe you're going to get peace and serenity back. Maybe you're going to get joy back. What is it that you're going to obtain once that happens? And then I want you to prepare for the worst possible outcome. And I want you to go there. I want you to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that's going to happen by setting this deadline and by saying when? And then I want you to ask yourself, how will I handle that? How will I handle the worst possible outcome? And I want you to go there. And once you've gone through those series of questions to prepare for the day, then go enlist the help of someone that cares about you to hold you accountable. And share the deadline with them, and then share the answers to all of those questions. What needs to take place for you to be ready? If this decision were made for you, how would you prepare? How will you feel, or what will you receive when it happens? And how will you handle the worst case scenario, the worst possible outcome? Once you've enlisted their help and you've told them how you want to be held accountable to it. So I always say, when we enlist help from someone, it's our job to tell them how we want to be held accountable. And then it's their job just to hold us accountable to what we said, right? And if we want to be in integrity and be of our word, then we're just going to do it. That person's just there as that extra security to make sure that we follow through with our word and our commitment. And then you're going to communicate the boundary. You're going to call the win. You're going to go get to the deadline, to that day, and you're going to present the boundary. And you're going to share with this individual what your ideal plan looks like for you going forward. So we communicate the boundary, and then we share the win for us. And then lastly, we have to be prepared for any way that they're going to show up. And we have to be ready to provide the space for their emotion and not take responsibility for their emotions. We do not have to take responsibility for the way that it's received. We just have to create the space to allow for it. And to remember that we're not responsible for their emotions. We're responsible for our own emotions, and we have to give ourselves time to process our emotions also. And therefore, this may be a process that you have to repeat more than one time, because sometimes that child may use your giving as a guilt and manipulation tactic to get what they want. And that is a changed behavior that's going to have to change over time. And therefore, you may have to go through this process over and over and over. The hardest part, though, is the first time and setting the boundary. And so when we become more in alignment with our values and centered with who we are, then we know when it's time to say when. And this process just helps you make it a reality. A lot of times we already know that we need to say when. It's just we avoid the pain and the uncomfortableness of doing it because we're afraid of the outcome. And then once we do it, we feel the joy, we receive the joy, we have relief, yet it's getting there that is the hardest part. And so if you can use this simple process, set the deadline, share the deadline, ask yourself those focusing questions to prepare yourself for the day, enlist someone that you care about to hold you accountable, communicate the boundary, and then be prepared to hold true to it, it will become easier and easier each time you do it. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions around the subject or the topic and you want to chat, just reach out to me, private message me. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.